You aren't the father of our kids. Alan first thought he heard her wrong. The room was cold from the air conditioner, but sweat still rushed down his back. The private hospital in Garki, Abuja, was quiet except for the soft beep of a machine near the bed and the faint sound of footsteps outside the door. Kate lay flat on the white sheets, her body small now, almost swallowed by the hospital gown. The strong woman he had married 14 years ago looked thin and tired, like life had been pulling her away piece by piece. Alan stood beside her with a paper bag in his hand. Inside it were the new drugs the doctor had prescribed that morning. He had driven across town to find them because the hospital pharmacy did not have them. He had argued with traffic, begged a supplier to wait, and spent nearly all the money in his account. And now this. Kate's lips trembled. Her voice was weak, dry, and cracked. "I have to tell you before I die," she whispered. Alan moved closer, his heart beating too fast. "Don't say that. You're not dying. The doctor said we should start these drugs first." Kate gave a sad little smile, the kind that already knew the truth. Then she looked at him, really looked at him. Her eyes were full of tears. "You aren't the father of our 2 children," she said. "Please forgive me. Their father is—" Her chest jerked. The words stopped. "Kate." Alan bent quickly. "Kate." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her fingers twitched once on the bedsheet. Her eyes rolled slightly, then stayed still in a way that made Alan's blood run cold. "No, no, no, no." He dropped the drug bag on the floor, bottles rolled under the chair, and he pressed the nurse call button so hard it nearly broke. "Help! Somebody help me!" 2 doctors rushed in with a nurse. They moved Alan aside. One checked her pulse, another shined a light into her eyes. The nurse adjusted the oxygen tube with shaking hands. Alan stood frozen near the wall. He could not feel his legs. He could not think. All he could hear were Kate's last words spinning in his head like something evil. "You aren't the father of our 2 children." One doctor stopped. He looked at the other. Their eyes met in silence. Then he turned to Alan. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "We lost her." Alan stared at him. Lost her? What kind of words were those? Kate was not keys. She was not money. She was not something misplaced in a market. She was his wife, his Kate, the woman who laughed too loudly at movies, the woman who always complained that he folded towels badly, the woman who used to dance while cooking on Sunday afternoons, the woman who had held his hand through years of struggle, years when they had almost nothing, and in the same breath, the woman who had just shattered his life. Alan let out a sound that did not feel human. It burst from somewhere deep inside him, raw and broken. He fell to his knees beside the bed and grabbed Kate's hand, but it was already losing warmth. "No, Kate," he whispered. "No, you can't say that and leave. You can't." His shoulders shook. The doctors quietly stepped out and gave him space. Alan cried until his throat hurt. He cried because she was dead. He cried because he loved her. He cried because her final gift to him was a wound with no answer. And worst of all, he cried because somewhere in his mind, beneath the pain, another voice had already begun to whisper, "Ahmadi, Aaron, not yours." That thought made him sick. He covered his mouth. He remembered the boys that morning before he left the house in Kubwa. Aaron, 13, pretending to be strong but blinking too much. Ahmadi, 10, quieter than usual, sitting with his school sandals half worn, asking, "Daddy, will Mummy come home this week?" Alan had told them yes. He had lied because he was afraid. Now there was a new fear. A darker one. What was he supposed to do with Kate's confession? Tell the family, tell the boys, bury it with her, ask questions she could no longer answer. He sat there for a long time, staring at her face. The nurse eventually returned with a white sheet. "Sir," she said gently. Alan nodded without seeing her. He stood up and stepped back. When the sheet covered Kate's face, something inside him seemed to close. Not heal. Never that. Just close. As if his heart had pulled a door shut because it could not survive the full storm at once. By evening, the news had spread. Kate's elder sister came first, wailing before she even entered the hospital gate. Then Alan's younger brother arrived from Nyanya. After that came church members, neighbors, cousins, Women from their old compound in Mararaba who still remembered when Kate sold Zobo and Chin Chin to support the family in the early years. Everyone cried, everyone praised Kate. She was a good woman. She suffered so much. She loved her children. She respected her husband. Alan stood among them like a man inside someone else's life. He nodded when people spoke to him. He accepted hugs. He answered questions. He signed papers. He arranged for the ambulance. He made calls with a voice that sounded normal enough. But inside he was drowning. Because every sentence stabbed him. She loved her children, yes. But by who? She respected her husband. Did she? She was a good woman. Was she? Each time someone mentioned the boys, Alan's chest tightened. Late that night, when he finally got home, Amadi and Aaron ran to him from the sitting room. Their eyes went straight to his face. Children know. Maybe not everything, but enough. "Daddy," Aaron asked, voice shaking, "where is Mummy?" Alan looked at them, really looked. Aaron was taller now, with serious eyes and a habit of biting the inside of his cheek when worried. Amadi's face was softer. His questions always quicker, his heart more open. 2 boys he had bathed, fed, carried, corrected, prayed over. 2 boys whose school fees he paid by working late contracts and skipping sleep. 2 boys who called him daddy with complete trust. And for one terrible second, he saw strangers. Alan hated himself immediately. He pulled them both into his arms, their small bodies pressed against him, one on the left, one on the right. He almost broke apart. "Mummy," he swallowed. "Mummy has gone to be with God." The cry that came from the 2 boys filled the whole house. Aaron tried to be brave for exactly 3 seconds. Then he collapsed against Alan's chest. Amadi screamed, "No, no, no," and beat his small fists against the air before sinking to the floor. Alan dropped down with them and held them tightly. When he did not know whose tears were whose anymore. That night, nobody slept. Women from church stayed in the house. Someone boiled tea, no one drank. Plastic chairs filled the compound. The generator hummed. Neighbors came and went. Prayers rose. Morning songs started softly in one corner. Alan sat in the bedroom he once shared with Kate and stared at her wrapper hanging behind the door. He remembered the first day they met in Lokoja. She had been wearing yellow. She had laughed at something he said and called him too serious for a young man. He remembered their wedding day, the rented canopy, the cheap jollof rice, the joy. He remembered when Aaron was born and he had cried in the hospital parking lot because he felt rich, even though he had only 700 naira in his wallet. Had Kate watched him hold that baby and kept quiet? Had she watched him name Amadi after his late father and said nothing? Had she lain beside him all those years with this secret sleeping between them? Around 3 a.m., he opened Kate's small handbag, the one her sister had brought back from the hospital. He did not know what he was looking for. Maybe a letter, maybe a clue, maybe proof that this was some terrible mistake. Inside were small things: lip balm, a folded handkerchief, a TM card, hospital receipts, a tiny prayer booklet. Then, tucked into the inner zip, he found an old photo. Alan froze. It was faded. The edges were bent. In the picture, Kate looked much younger, healthier, round-faced. She was standing beside a man Alan had never seen before. The man had one arm resting on a car, and he was smiling at the camera like he already owned the world. On the back of the photo, in Kate's handwriting, were 6 words: "You saved me when nobody did." Alan's fingers began to shake. Who was the man in the picture? And why had Kate hidden him for all these years? He looked toward the door, where his sons were sleeping in the next room after crying themselves silent. Then he looked back at the photo. And for the first time since Kate died, Alan felt something worse than grief. He felt the truth moving toward him. Slowly, quietly, like a knife. Alan did not sleep. He sat on the edge of the bed as morning slowly crept into the room, turning the curtains from dark to grey, then to a dull, soft light. The photo stayed in his hand all night. He kept turning it over, looking at Kate's younger face, as looking at the man beside her, looking at those 6 words again and again. "You saved me when nobody did." Saved her from what? And when? Alan tried to think back, carefully, slowly, as if the past was something fragile that could break if he rushed it. 14 years of marriage. But there had been years before that, years he did not fully know. Kate had never liked talking about her past. She would always smile and say, "Let sleeping dogs lie." Or she would change the topic. At the time, Alan had respected it. Everyone had something painful they didn't want to revisit. But now those missing pieces felt dangerous. By 6 a.m., voices had started again in the compound. Women sweeping, someone boiling water, low conversations filled with pity. Alan stood up slowly, still holding the photo. His body felt heavy, like every step cost him something. He walked into the sitting room. Amadi and Aaron were curled up together on the couch. They had cried so much the night before that their eyes were swollen. Aaron had one arm protectively around his younger brother, even in sleep. Alan stopped. He watched them quietly. His sons. Were they still his sons? The question came again, and again he pushed it away. No, not now, not like this. He turned and walked outside. By mid-morning, plans for the burial were already moving quickly. In their culture, especially with the way Kate had suffered, the elders agreed she should be buried the next day. No long delays, no drawn-out ceremonies. Alan nodded at everything. He did not argue, he did not suggest, he simply followed. Because his mind was somewhere else. Later that afternoon, as people moved in and out of the house, Alan quietly slipped away. He went back into the bedroom and locked the door. Then he sat on the floor, the photo in front of him, his breathing slow, controlled, like a man preparing to open something he might not survive. "Who are you?" he whispered. The man in the picture stared back at him, confident, comfortable, like someone who had never struggled a day in his life. Alan noticed something now. The car beside it wasn't just any car. Even though the photo was old, Alan could tell it was expensive. The kind of car people only saw in Abuja high-end areas like Maitama or Asokoro, which meant Kate had known this man long before she met Alan. And not just known him, the message on the back of the photo made that clear. "You saved me when nobody did." Alan closed his eyes, his chest tightened. Something inside him was beginning to connect, slowly, painfully. He remembered a time, years ago, very early in their marriage. Kate had fallen sick, not like now, just a minor illness. But she had been weak, and they had no money. Alan had borrowed from friends. He had struggled. That night, Kate had cried quietly and said something strange. "I've seen worse days than this," she had whispered. Alan had asked, "What do you mean?" She had shaken her head. "Nothing. Just forget it." At the time, he had not pushed. Now it felt like a door he should have opened. A soft knock came on the door. Alan?" It was his younger brother, Musa. Alan quickly wiped his face and stood up. "Come in." Musa entered, looking concerned. "People are asking for you outside. The elders want to confirm some burial arrangements." "I'm coming." Musa hesitated, then he looked at Alan more closely. "Are you okay?" Alan forced a small nod. "I'm fine." Musa didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. He just placed a hand on Alan's shoulder and said, "You're strong. I know this is hard, but you're strong." Alan almost laughed. Strong. If Musa knew what was inside his head right now, he would not say that. The burial happened the next day. It was quick. Too quick. One moment Kate was in their house. The next moment, she was gone, buried in the earth. Final. People cried. Prayers were said. The pastor spoke about forgiveness, about life, about how nothing in this world is truly ours. Alan stood there listening, and one sentence stayed with him. Sometimes the people we love carry secrets we never understand, until it is too late. Alan's throat tightened. Too late. Yes. Too late to ask her. Too late to hear the full truth. Too late to understand. That night, after everyone had left and the house was finally quiet, Alan sat alone in the sitting room. The boys were asleep again, this time from exhaustion. Alan placed the photo on the table in front of him, then he spoke out loud. Not to anyone, just to the silence. Who is he? No answer. Is he the father? Silence. Alan leaned back and covered his face. His mind started racing again. What if this man was still alive? What if he had been somewhere all these years, knowing, watching? What if Kate had been hiding him, protecting him, choosing him, even while married to Alan? The thought burned. Alan stood up suddenly. No. His voice was firm now, different. Something had shifted. He could not live like this. He could not raise those boys with this question hanging over his head forever. He needed to know, even if the truth destroyed him. He picked up the photo again. This time, he looked closer than ever. There was something small in the background. A signboard. Blurry, but not impossible to read. Alan squinted, moved the photo closer to the light. His heart skipped. He could make out part of the name. Motors Limited. Below it, faintly, Lokoja. Lokoja. Alan froze. That was where he first met Kate. That was where everything began. His grip tightened around the photo. If this man had a connection to Lokoja, then maybe, just maybe, the past was not as far away as he thought. Alan looked toward the dark hallway where his sons slept, then back at the photo. A decision formed, clear, sharp, and dangerous. I'm going to find you, he said quietly. The room felt colder, as if something had just woken up, and far away, in a place Alan could not yet see. The truth he was chasing was already moving toward him. Alan left Abuja 3 days after the burial. He did not tell many people. To others, it sounded simple. Work trip. That was what he told Musa. That was what he told the boys. But inside, it was not work. It was something heavier. In something that had started the moment Kate whispered those words and never finished her sentence. The road to Lokoja was long, dusty in some parts, smooth in others, familiar, yet strange. Alan drove alone. No music, no phone calls, just silence, and thoughts that refused to stay quiet. He kept seeing Kate's face, the way her lips struggled to move, the way her eyes begged for forgiveness, and those unfinished words, "Their father is..." Alan gripped the steering wheel tighter. Who? He muttered. The question had become a shadow. It followed him everywhere. Lokoja had changed. New buildings, more traffic, more noise. But some things remained. The old market road, the roadside food sellers, the smell of roasted corn mixed with dust and sun. Alan parked near a small junction not far from where he used to live years ago. He stepped out slowly. His heart beat faster. Not from fear, from memory. This was where everything started. This was where he met Kate. He began to walk, step by step, looking around, trying to match the present with the past. Then he saw it. A signboard. Old, faded, slightly bent, but still standing. Motors Limited. Alan stopped breathing. He stepped closer, wiped the dust from the board with his hand. The full name appeared. Okoro Motors Limited. Alan felt something hit his chest, hard, like the truth had just knocked on his door. Okoro. He whispered the name. It felt heavy on his tongue. Familiar, yet not. His eyes slowly moved back to the photo in his hand. The man beside Kate. The car. The confidence. The life she had never explained. Alan's stomach twisted. Is this him? The compound looked quiet. And a large gate, rusty but still strong. Inside he could see cars, not new, but not abandoned either. This place was still active. Alan walked toward the gate, his steps slow, careful, like he was stepping into something he could not undo. He knocked. Once, twice. Then a man appeared, mid-40s, dark-skinned, wearing a grease-stained shirt, probably a mechanic. What do you want? The man asked. Alan swallowed. I'm looking for someone. Who? Alan hesitated, just for a second. Then he said it. Okoro. The man's face changed slightly. Not fear, not shock, just recognition. You mean Oga Okoro? Alan nodded slowly. Yes. The mechanic wiped his hands on a rag. He's not here. Alan's heart dropped. Where is he? The man looked at him carefully now, like he was trying to read something in his face. Ma, why are you looking for him? Alan opened his mouth, closed it, then said the only truth he could manage. "I need answers." The mechanic stared at him for a long moment, then sighed. "Oga Okoro doesn't stay here anymore. He moved to Abuja years ago." Alan blinked. "Abuja?" "Yes, big man now, very big." Alan felt something cold run through him. Abuja, the same city, the same place Alan had been living all along. Close, too close. "How long?" Alan asked. "Maybe 15, 16 years. Alan staggered slightly. 15 years, that number hit him like a slap. 15 years ago. That was when Aaron was born. The mechanic continued, unaware of the storm he had just created. "But he still comes sometimes, not often, maybe once in a while." Alan leaned against the gate, his mind was spinning. Everything was beginning to connect, too fast, too sharp. "Do you have his contact?" Alan asked. The mechanic shook his head. "No, but—" He paused. "There is someone who might help you." Alan looked up. "Who?" The mechanic pointed down the street. "Madame Ngozi, she used to work for him. She knows many things." Alan found the house easily, small, neat, paint slightly peeling. He knocked. A woman in her late 50s opened the door. Her eyes were sharp, careful. "Yes?" she asked. "Good afternoon, Ma." "Good afternoon. I'm looking for Madame Ngozi." "That's me." Alan's throat tightened. This was it. "I need to ask you about someone," he said. She folded her arms. "Who?" Alan reached into his pocket, pulled out the photo, and handed it to her. The moment her eyes fell on it, everything changed. Her face froze, and her lips parted slightly. Then she looked up at Alan, slowly, carefully. "Where did you get this?" Alan's heart began to pound. "This woman," he said, pointing at Kate. "She was my wife." Silence, heavy, long. Madame Ngozi looked back at the photo, then back at Alan. Her voice dropped. Low, serious. "I knew this day would come." Alan's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" She stepped aside. "Come inside." The room was quiet, simple. A small fan turned slowly in the corner. Madame Ngozi sat down, the photo still in her hand. She stared at it like it carried memories she had tried to forget. Alan remained standing, waiting, breathing unevenly. "Talk to me," he said softly. Madame Ngozi sighed, then she spoke. "Your wife, Kate." She paused, shook her head slightly. "That girl suffered." Alan frowned. "Wani suffered how?" Madame Ngozi looked at him, deep, like she was about to open something that could not be closed again. "She came to Oga Okoro when she had nothing," she said slowly. "No food, no help, no family support." Alan's hands began to shake. "And Okoro?" he asked. Madame Ngozi's eyes darkened. "He helped her." A pause. Then, "But not for free." Alan felt the ground shift beneath him. "What do you mean?" he whispered. Madame Ngozi leaned forward slightly. Her voice dropped even lower. "What I mean is that your wife did not just receive help. She paid for it." Alan's chest tightened. His breath became shallow. "No," he muttered. "No, that's not—" Madame Ngozi cut him off. "You came for the truth," she said firmly. "Now listen to it." Alan froze, his heart pounding, his ears ringing. Madame Ngozi held the photo tighter. Then she said the words that made everything stop. "Okoro is not just someone from her past." She paused, looked straight into Alan's eyes. "He is the father of those children." Alan staggered back. His body hit the wall behind him. The air left his lungs. Everything went silent. But Madame Ngozi wasn't done, because the next words were even worse. "And that is not even the full story." Alan did not sit. He could not. His legs felt weak, but something inside him refused to rest. He stood there in Madame Ngozi's small living room, his back pressed against the wall, as if the truth needed him pinned in place so it could finish its work. His ears were still ringing. "He is the father of those children." The words would not leave. They echoed, louder each time. Alan swallowed hard. On his throat felt dry. "You said—" "That's not the full story," he managed to say. His voice sounded strange. not like his own. Madame Ngozi nodded slowly. She placed the photo on the small wooden table between them and rested her hands on her lap. For a moment, she didn't speak, as if she was choosing carefully which part of the truth would hurt him the least. But there was no gentle way to say it. "There was a time," she began, "when your wife had nothing. Nothing at all. She was staying in a small room near the old market. She couldn't pay rent. She couldn't eat properly. People she trusted had already turned their backs on her." Alan listened. Each word felt like a step deeper into something dark. "She came to Okoro for help," Madame Ngozi continued. Not because she wanted to, but because she had no other choice." Alan closed his eyes. He didn't want to imagine it, but his mind did anyway. Kate, alone, hungry, desperate, and another man, offering help, at a cost. "She thought it would be once," Madame Ngozi said softly. "Just once, to survive." Alan opened his eyes. His hands were trembling now. "But it didn't stop there," she added. Silence, heavy. "Okoro liked her," Madame Ngozi said, "more than he should have. He kept her close, gave her money, paid her rent, bought her things. But he also—" She hesitated. Alan stared at her. "Say it," he said. Madame Ngozi met his eyes. "He controlled her." The word hung in the air, controlled. Alan's chest rose and fell slowly. Pain, anger, confusion. They all mixed together. "And the children?" he asked. I barely above a whisper. Madame Ngozi looked down at the photo. "They came during that time." Alan's head dropped. For a moment he said nothing. Then he laughed. A dry, broken laugh. "So, all those years." He shook his head slowly. "All those birthdays, school runs, hospital visits, everything." His voice cracked. "I was living a life that was never mine." Madame Ngozi didn't respond, because there was nothing to say. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time felt strange. Alan finally spoke again. "Why did she leave him?" he asked. This time Madame Ngozi answered quickly. "She got tired." Alan looked up. "Tired?" "Yes," she said firmly. "Tired of being controlled. Tired of living a life that didn't belong to her. Tired of feeling like she owed someone her whole existence." She paused. "Then she met you." Alan blinked. "Me?" Madame Ngozi nodded. "You were different, simple, honest. You didn't know her past. You didn't ask too many questions. You just loved her." Alan felt something twist inside him. Loved her. Yes, Madame Ngozi continued. For the first time in her life, she had something real. Something she chose. Not something forced on her. Alan sat down slowly now. His strength had left him. "So she ran," he said quietly. "Yes. And she never told me the truth." Madame Ngozi looked at him with soft eyes. "She wanted a new life," she said. "A clean start. And maybe she was afraid that if she told you, she would lose you." Alan shook his head. "She already lost me," he whispered. The room went quiet again. Only the fan made a soft clicking sound as it turned. Alan stared at the floor. Then something hit him. Sharp. Sudden. "Wait." He looked up quickly. "You said Okoro moved to Abuja." "Yes." "And he knew where she was?" Madame Ngozi hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Alan stood up again. "Answer me." Her voice dropped. "Yes." Alan froze. "What do you mean, yes?" Madame Ngozi looked away. He never stopped watching. Alan felt his heart stop. "What?" "He had people," she said. "Workers, drivers, boys who run errands. He knew where she lived. He knew she got married. He knew about the children." Alan's stomach turned. "No." "Yes," she said. "Why?" Alan demanded. "Why didn't he come? Why didn't he say anything?" Madame Ngozi finally looked back at him. "Because he didn't need to." Alan frowned. "I don't understand." She leaned forward slightly. He was waiting. The words felt cold, like ice. "Waiting for what?" Alan asked. Madame Ngozi's eyes held his. "For the right time." Alan's mind raced, waiting, watching, all these years. "Does he know she's dead?" Alan asked. Madame Ngozi nodded slowly. "Yes." "How?" She didn't answer immediately, and again, that silence spoke louder than words. Alan stepped back, his chest rising fast now. "You mean—" His voice dropped. "He's already moving." Madame Ngozi said nothing, but her eyes said everything. Alan grabbed the photo from the table. His hands were no longer shaking. They were steady now, too steady. Something inside him had changed. The pain was still there, the confusion too. But now, there was something else. Clarity. Sharp, focused, dangerous. "He's coming," Alan said quietly. Madame Ngozi didn't deny it. Alan turned toward the door. "Thank you," he said. Then he stopped. Without turning back, he added, "But if he comes near my children—" He paused, his jaw tightened. "He will regret it." That night, Alan drove back to Abuja, faster than he came. His mind no longer searching, it had found what it needed. Now, it was preparing. Because somewhere in that same city, a man named Okoro was already watching, already waiting, already ready to step into a life he had abandoned years ago. And Alan knew one thing for sure: this was not over, not even close. As he entered his street in Kubwa, he noticed something strange. The gate was slightly open. Alan slowed the car, his eyes narrowed. The house lights were on, but something felt wrong, very wrong. He parked slowly, stepped out, walked toward the door, each step heavy, careful. Then he heard it. Voices, inside, strange voices, deep, calm, confident. Alan's hand touched the door. He pushed it open slowly, and what he saw inside made his heart drop. Alan pushed the door open, slowly, carefully, but nothing could prepare him for what he saw. Two unfamiliar men stood inside his living room. Tall, calm, dressed in neat shirts and dark trousers, the kind of men who did not look like trouble, but carried it quietly. And sitting on his chair, like he owned the place, was a man in his late 50s. Dark-skinned, well-fed, confident. His fingers rested on a walking stick, not because he needed it, but because it suited him. His eyes lifted slowly to meet Alan's. Then he smiled. Not warmly, not kindly, just knowingly. "Alan," the man said. Alan's chest tightened. He already knew, even before the man spoke again. "My name is Okoro." Silence, heavy. Breathing became loud in Alan's ears. Behind him, the door creaked slightly as it closed. Inside the house, everything had changed. Amadi and Aaron stood near the dining table, confused, alert. Amadi's eyes moved between Alan and the stranger. Aaron's jaw was tight, like he was already trying to protect something he did not fully understand. "Daddy," Amadi said softly. Alan raised his hand slightly, a silent signal. "Stay back." Then he stepped forward. One step, then another, until he stood directly across from Okoro. "You shouldn't be here," Alan said. His voice was calm, but underneath, fire. Okoro chuckled lightly. "I expected that." His eyes moved to the boys, then back to Alan. "I've come for my children." The words landed like a slap. Alan didn't move, didn't blink. "Your children," he repeated slowly. "Ichi, yes," Okoro said. "I have watched long enough. I have waited. Now they are grown. It is time they know their blood." Amadi frowned. Aaron stepped forward slightly. "What is he talking about?" Aaron asked. No one answered, because the truth had just walked into the room. Uninvited. Alan inhaled slowly, then exhaled. "Get out," he said. Simple, clear, final. Okoro's smile faded just a little. "I am not here to argue," he said. "I am here to take responsibility." Alan laughed. This time it was not broken, it was sharp. Cold. "Responsibility," he repeated. "You disappeared for 28 years, Alan said, stepping closer. "You watched from the shadows while I carried everything. Now you walk into my house and say responsibility." Okoro's face hardened slightly. "I did what was necessary," he said. "No," Alan replied. "You did what was easy." Silence. The air grew thick, tight. Amadi stepped forward now, his voice firm. "Sir, whoever you are, you need to leave our house." Okoro turned to him slowly, his expression softened. But not in a good way. It was the kind of softness that didn't ask, it expected. "You are my son," Okoro said. Amadi blinked, then shook his head. "No," he said. Aaron moved beside his brother. "We don't know you." Okoro sighed, like a man tired of explaining simple things. "I have DNA results," he said calmly. "Proof. You are my blood." Aaron's hands clenched. "And where were you?" he asked. His voice trembled, but not from fear, from anger. "Where were you when we were sick? When we needed school fees? When Mummy was dying?" Okoro didn't answer immediately, and because there was no good answer. Alan stepped forward again. This time he stood between Okoro and the boys. A wall. "You heard them," Alan said. "Leave." Okoro's eyes narrowed. "You think this is your decision?" he asked. Alan didn't hesitate. "Yes." Okoro leaned back slightly, then nodded once, as if he had expected resistance. "Very well," he said. He tapped his walking stick lightly on the floor. One of the men behind him stepped forward, but before anything could happen, Amadi moved. Fast, he grabbed his phone and dialed. "Hello? Police?" "Yes, please come to our house immediately." Okoro's eyes flashed. "You dare?" "Yes," Amadi said firmly. "We dare." Aaron stood beside him, unshaken now, united. Minutes later, sirens, loud, clear, closing in. The two men behind Okoro shifted slightly, uncomfortable. But Okoro remained still, calm, until the police entered. Questions were asked, voices raised, statements made, and for the first time in years, Okoro was not the one in control. The case moved quickly, too serious to ignore, too public to hide. In court, Okoro presented his DNA results. Clear. Undeniable. Biologically, he was their father. But truth is not always simple, because the judge listened, carefully, to everything else, to how Kate had come to him with nothing, to how he had used her situation, to how he disappeared, to how he watched from a distance while another man raised the children, to how he only returned when everything was already built. The courtroom was silent. Then the judge spoke, his voice steady, firm. "Being a father is not just about blood," he said. "It is about presence, sacrifice, responsibility." He looked directly at Okoro. "You abandoned that role." A pause, heavy. Then, "You have no right to destroy the family that was built in your absence." Okoro's face changed. For the first time, he looked uncertain. The judgment came, clear, final. Okoro was sentenced to 20 years imprisonment. Not just for what he had done in the past, but for trying to return and break what he had no hand in building. Outside the courtroom, silence, then movement. Amadi turned first, then Aaron. They both looked at Alan, not confused, not uncertain, clear, certain. "Daddy," Amadi said. Aaron nodded. "We're going home." Alan felt something inside him break, then rebuild, stronger. He opened his arms, and they stepped into them, tightly, like they had when they were small. Only now, they understood. If you like this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.